Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are top stories. Israel Defense Forces tightened their grip on Gaza after reporting the most intense day of fighting in weeks and reiterates its critical mission to bring hostages home.
Jewish students from Ivy League universities visit a House hearing about campus anti-Semitism to share their personal stories. Then hear how the presidents of Harvard, UPenn, and MIT define their policies around harassment.
Should the U.S. border come before Ukraine? House Speaker Mike Johnson clashing with the White House over funding priorities. The question persists, where is your tax money going next?
Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney says she'll be doing everything she can to stop Trump from getting elected. That includes a potential 2024 presidential run. CVS is changing up its pricing model for prescription drugs. Find out what that means for your wallet.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Wednesday, December 6th.
Yeah, and it's been nearly 2 months since the October 7th terrorist attack.
Right. Yeah, and so much has happened, is happening, of course. We have, Israel still intercepting missiles. More, we're going to talk about the clashes that are happening in the West Bank. And, of course, there is more intense fighting from Hezbollah's side, too.
Right, and the fighting between Israel and Hamas is intensifying, with Israel saying that it's fighting in the heart of Khan Younis. And reportedly, hostages' families are outraged after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that there's no possibility that the hostages will be released at this point right now.
That's right. The meeting apparently resulted in quite some chaos, as people have told media. And the latest development is that Israel says it has eliminated 5 Hamas commanders of the northern Gaza Strip Brigade. The IDF says the terrorists were killed while hiding in a tunnel near Gaza's Indonesian hospital.
Israel's military says this morning that it has not lost sight of the critical mission to rescue hostages. This as reports detailing harsh conditions from freed captives emerge. One Israeli health ministry official says Hamas drugged some with anti-anxiety medication during their transfer.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday rejected the idea of an international security force being needed in Gaza after the war ends. He says the IDF should keep control of the strip for disarmament. Israel is now contending with another terrorist group in the Gaza Strip, the Islamic Jihad. Israel Defense Forces said that yesterday was the most intense day of fighting in 5 weeks.
NTD's Jason Perry has the report, which explains why some civilians are not evacuating the battle zones.
Israel Defense Forces have completely surrounded the Jabalia camp in the northern Gaza Strip. On Tuesday, the IDF reported raiding a Hamas Internal Security Forces Command and Control Center in Jabalia. IDF troops also located and destroyed rockets found in a garden at a residence in the area. The IDF already has control of the north and has repeatedly asked residents to evacuate to the south. But it may be easier said than done, as Hamas, on the other hand, has told residents to ignore Israel's orders to evacuate their homes. And even more so, in October, mosques in Gaza broadcasted the message, "Hold on to your homes, hold on to your land." Israel's chief of the general staff gave an update.
Those who thought that the IDF would not know how to renew the fighting after the pause were mistaken, and Hamas is already feeling this. Many Hamas operatives, including senior commanders, have been eliminated in recent days.
The IDF is also continuing its operations in southern Gaza. On Tuesday, the IDF reported surrounding Gaza's second largest city, Khan Younis, in the south. And they are continuing to move inwards, battling terrorists along the way. Israeli forces are not only fighting Hamas there, but also the Islamic Jihad, another terrorist group operating in the Gaza Strip. That group released a video on Tuesday showing terrorists firing machine guns and carrying rocket launchers. Also on Tuesday, residents were seen leaving this area to go further south to Rafah, near the Egyptian border.
Then they brought us to Khan Younis, where they said it would be safe. And now from Khan Younis to Rafah, where they said it would be safe. Safety can only be provided by God, and whatever God has willed will happen.
Department of State spokesperson Matthew Miller said this about the IDF's recent operations in the south.
Number one, making clear to Israel that we do not want to see this campaign conducted in the south the way it has been conducted in the north. We are 4 or 5 days into this campaign in the south. It's just started again after the pause. It's too early to make, I think, overall assessments about how it's going. But certainly I know for civilians on the ground, conditions are incredibly difficult.
Miller also said that Israel is not allowing enough humanitarian aid, including fuel, to enter the Gaza Strip. And he added that the U.S. has made this clear to Israel and is engaging with them to address the human suffering. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And now to learn more about Israel's operations in Gaza, we're bringing in David Wormser, a senior analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy. David, thank you for your time. What success has the Israeli military had in northern Gaza in terms of Hamas leadership being taken out, terrorist infrastructure destroyed, and intelligence seized?
Well, it's had, I think, tremendous success in the north. It's wiped out most of the leadership now that is local to the north of the Gaza Strip. It has captured an immense amount of equipment. And I think it's more or less now on the verge, or if not almost completely wiped out, the ability of Hamas to operate in any way, especially right now what concerns the Israelis is a continued missile threat. So they've essentially neutralized that threat from the northern part of Gaza Strip. However, we still see a lot coming from the south. So there's certainly that. But the operational leadership of the north, including a lot of the military leadership, has already been neutralized.
Right, and as reported, those 5 commanders of the Hamas brigade in North Gaza were taken out, so that certainly is a significant step for them. There has been reports from the IDF of a command center beneath the Al-Shifa hospital, and now they actually had raided a Hamas command and control center in Jabalia. So what intelligence is there that they can gather from these things?
Well, there's a lot of intelligence they gather. First of all, some is counterintelligence. What they're finding in some of these areas are maps so detailed of Israeli bases and so forth that clearly there were operatives on the ground in Israel in those military bases. So first of all, there's a huge counterintelligence effort underway. But more importantly right now, because the war is ongoing and it's acute, is the intelligence. And what they're finding is a lot about the leadership structure, about methods of fighting, the sort of weaponry that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad have. So they're better prepared, and they know much more about what to expect with each new area of town in the north or in any area they enter into in the south on the ground. They pretty much know now what to expect, as well as there might be intelligence operatives that now come out of the woodwork. Seeing Hamas lose is certainly an intelligence boon in the sense that people are making their peace with Israel's entry, and more people are willing to pay the price of going to the Israelis and saying this is where Hamas is hiding. So you have this snowballing effect of operatives as you move into an area.
Right, those are some hard-fought assets that the IDF now has. The United States has expressed concern that a similar campaign will take place in southern Gaza as it did in northern Gaza, with the international community all watching very closely what's happening there. What tactics did the IDF use in the north, and are we going to see a similar situation in the south?
Well, I think in the south what you're seeing is there's a little bit less preparatory bombing before. I mean, Israel always abided by international humanitarian law. In fact, it took the American standard, the way the United States would act, and even did more tightly controlled operations from that. But what you're seeing in the South is perhaps a greater emphasis on very focused bombs that may take out a floor in a house rather than take out the house. But we're also seeing a lot of Israeli ground activity that is infantry, house to house, hand to hand, entry into houses rather than bombing. And that's costing Israel. You see already the effects in terms of Israeli casualties. The Israeli casualties went up very much in the last 48 hours. And this is certainly as a result of an answer to the United States, who has asked for Israel to be more careful. Of course, the more careful Israel is, the more Israeli soldiers that will claim.
Yes, it does come at that cost. David Wormser, Senior Analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy, thank you for weighing in on this.
Thank you.
Israel has revoked the residence visa of the United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator Lynn Hastings. That's according to Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Eli Cohen, who posted on X.
Cohen said Israel will no longer be silent in the face of the bias of the UN after Hastings failed to condemn the October 7th massacre and kidnappings. Instead, Cohen said Hastings condemned Israel, a democratic country that protects its citizens. Hastings has strongly criticized Israel for its military campaign in Gaza, which according to the UN has created a humanitarian disaster. Hastings has served in the post since late 2020.
And Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a new visa restriction policy yesterday. It's aimed to stop violent individuals from the West Bank from coming to the U.S.
Blinken says the policy applies to both Israelis and Palestinians responsible for any attacks. Here's State Department spokesman Matt Miller on the move.
Under this policy, the United States will pursue visa restrictions against individuals involved in or meaningfully contributing to the undermining of peace, security, or stability in the West Bank. This includes acts of violence against persons or property, as well as undue restrictions on civilians' access to essential services and basic necessities. Immediate family members of such persons may also be subject to these restrictions.
The State Department says the policy will apply to both Israelis and Palestinians responsible for attacks in the West Bank.
Blinken says the U.S. will continue to seek accountability for all acts of violence against West Bank civilians, regardless of the perpetrator or the victim.
Jewish students from Harvard, UPenn, and MIT shared personal stories ahead of yesterday's House hearing on combating campus anti-Semitism. Presidents from the three universities then testified about what they've been doing to address it and how their institutions define harassment. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more about their testimonies.
MIT graduate student Talia Khan was one of 4 Jewish college students who shared personal experiences before Tuesday's hearing. The daughter to Jewish and Afghan Muslim parents says the university's environment became extremely toxic and anti-Semitic after October 7th, and that the administration has failed to address the crisis. Khan says she left her study group because group members told her people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die for partying on stolen land.
I don't want to have to keep advocating for Jewish student safety on campus. It's not my job. It's your job. Please do your job and act now. And if you can't, I'm asking Congress to do it for you.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said the suppression of religious freedom is not who Americans are and goes against the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Johnson stated history has proven that anti-Semitism left unchecked will spread to other minorities and ultimately all people of religions.
Make no mistake, what's happening at colleges today is not free speech. It's exactly the opposite. The stifling of free speech and free expression, the demonizations of students for simply living out their faith and who they are.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik fired off questions to university professors during the committee hearing on their efforts to combat the rise in campus anti-Semitism. But Stefanik couldn't seem to get a straight answer, receiving drawn-out and similar responses.
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question.
Harvard's university president Claudine Gay testified she's heard genocidal calls against Israel on campus and personally finds it abhorrent, but stated the university gives a wide berth to free expression.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you not say here that it is against the code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
does that speech not cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When
you
that speech,
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
we embrace a commitment to free expression.
Stefanik later put the same question about code of conduct and calls for genocide to UPenn President Liz McGill, who also refused to answer yes or no, saying it depends on context.
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes.
The university presidents were also grilled over foreign funding. Harvard's Gay refused to answer if the university had received $1.5 billion from foreign governments and entities for its Middle East Studies department over the last 3 years. She would only say the university receives funding from various sources. Stefanik is calling for her resignation. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Should the U.S. border come before Ukraine? House Speaker Mike Johnson clashing with the White House over funding priorities. The question persists, where is your tax money going next?
Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney is considering a third-party 2024 presidential run. Her reason might not surprise you.
President Biden made a brave move yesterday during his speech to his donors. Hear what he said.
Beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
What was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. This doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.
We've been spending a lot more time than ever at home these days. So maybe now you've just noticed cold air coming in from a couple windows, or that your patio door isn't closing fully, which means you're losing heat in the winter, losing cooling in the summer, losing money all year long. And that means now is the time for new windows and patio doors from Renewal by Andersen. Most installations are usually done in just one day. Renewal by Andersen windows and doors can help lower your heating bills and air conditioning bills with their most energy efficient glass available. Only their windows are made with Fibrex material, proven to be 2 times stronger than vinyl. And they're backed by a 20-year warranty. And right now, when you buy one window or patio door, get one at 40% off. Plus, there's no money down, no payments for 12 months, and no interest for 12 months. Plus, an additional $200 off your entire purchase.
1-800-218-1510.
Good to have you back. House Speaker Mike Johnson insisting on an overhaul of border policy as the White House pleads with Congress for more Ukraine money. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
House Speaker Mike Johnson is staying firm in his letter to the White House on Tuesday, insisting that any additional aid to Ukraine is, quote, dependent upon enactment of transformative change to our nation's border security laws. He's also asking the White House questions such as what is the ultimate end game for the United States in Ukraine and how exactly was taxpayer money spent in Ukraine. Johnson's strong-worded response comes after the White House on Monday urged lawmakers to pass additional aid to Ukraine, saying that the current aid allocated to Ukraine is already running out. The administration also invited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to talk to lawmakers on Tuesday virtually about the urgent need for more aid. Zelensky was not able to make it but sent his delegates to talk to lawmakers. But some Senate Republicans still, after the meeting, told us that they still think that the border is a higher priority than Ukraine. Watch.
There's support for Ukraine, but there has to be security of our border. Yesterday, over 10,000 people came into this country. Today, another 10,000. This is a rate of 3.7 million a year. We have to stop that.
Meanwhile, some Senate Democrats echoing the White House's message that if we don't send more aid to Ukraine, it's going to hurt democracy. Watch.
And the historic consequences of abandoning Ukraine at this moment in time would haunt this country for decades. I mean, who would ever trust our alliances again?
The United States has already sent well over $100 billion to Ukraine, while some Republicans are questioning why we're not spending that money at home, including on our own border. Senate Democrats are pushing ahead with a test vote on Wednesday on whether or not to approve President Biden's $100 billion emergency funding package, which includes some $60 billion additional aid for Ukraine. Back to you.
Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney says she's eyeing a potential 2024 presidential run.
She told the Washington Post she's considering running as a third-party candidate. Here's Cheney on why she wants to join the race.
Right now and in this election cycle, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure Donald Trump's not elected.
Cheney says she never would have thought about a third-party run several years ago, but that she thinks democracy is at risk, both internationally and in the U.S., because of Trump's influence over the GOP.
Cheney was one of the few Republicans who voted to impeach Trump. She also sat on the January 6th committee.
Tune in tonight at 10 p.m. for exclusive post-debate coverage on NTD News.
Gain insights, analysis, and a comprehensive review of the debate. Don't miss out on the in-depth perspectives.
President Biden says former President Trump is keeping him in the race.
Biden told Democratic donors yesterday he wasn't sure he'd be seeking another term if Trump wasn't running for the White House.
Biden also said Democrats cannot let Trump win. The president commented during a fundraiser at a private home outside Boston.
The Biden campaign shrugged off the president's statement, saying the president has always described Trump as a unique threat to the country. Biden appeared to walk back the comment later Tuesday on the White House lawn.
Would you be running for president if Trump wasn't running?
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
Would you drop out if Trump runs out?
No, not now.
Former President Trump spoke at a town hall in Iowa last night. The event was hosted by Fox News host Sean Hannity.
Trump pledged to speed up oil and gas drilling, saying the U.S. will once again be rich.
The GOP frontrunner says he does not believe Biden will be running as the Democratic nominee in 2024. The 2024 candidate declared he will win Iowa in the election.
Trump also referred to the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan as the most embarrassing moment in U.S. history. Hannity asked him if he would abuse his power if reelected. Trump jokingly responded by saying he would do so only on day one, when he would close the border and drill for oil.
An Arizona federal judge has dismissed a ballot challenge against former President Trump. The lawsuit sought to bar Trump from the Arizona ballot.
The suit claimed Trump violated the Constitution by engaging in rebellion or insurrection through his alleged involvement in the January 6 Capitol breach.
A Trump spokesman called the lawsuit an attempt to interfere with the 2024 election and a waste of time for the nation's judiciary.
Similar cases against Trump in Michigan, Colorado, and Minnesota have also been dismissed.
2 GOP lawmakers launched an investigation on Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis yesterday. That's over her criminal case against former President Trump.
Congressman Jim Jordan and Barry Loudermilk allege Willis's office worked with the January 6 committee investigating the Capitol breach.
The two point to a letter from Willis to Representative Benny Thompson, the committee's chairman.
The letter requested access to congressional records. Willis wrote that the records were relevant to her investigation of potential interference in Georgia's 2020 general election.
Republicans argue this coordination raises concerns about due process and the proper disclosure of information.
They're demanding communications between Willis's office and the January 6 committee.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says he will soon release additional footage of the January 6 Capitol breach.
Johnson drew criticism from several media outlets, including CNN, after he stated he would blur out some participants' faces.
CNN claimed that Johnson is deliberately trying to conceal the identities of those involved to avoid prosecution. During the announcement, Johnson said the reason for blurring out their faces would be to protect them from retaliation and unjustified actions by the Department of Justice.
Johnson asserted that the footage will be released as quickly as possible. He added that concealing the identity of some of those involved would not only protect them from unwarranted retaliation, but also other concerns and problems related to the incident.
It ends a 10-month standoff over a Pentagon abortion policy. Melina Weisskopf has more on why the Alabama senator is backing down.
Sparks fly on Capitol Hill. Witnesses and lawmakers clash over who should play in women's sports and about a controversial move by the Biden administration. Stay tuned.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
This right here is confidence in a bottle. It makes me feel so much more confident than I've ever felt.
They are some of the hottest videos on social media. Those videos claiming to instantly get rid of bags under your eyes. Annette Figueroa is here to tell us why she says this one is for real.
This one is for real, and I'm so excited. We even have a video, and all he uses is a small amount on a clean, dry face. And what it does is it tightens and lifts the appearance of bags underneath your eyes. And I did this to my father father. We were at home, so we applied it to his under eye bags, and let me tell you, we were so excited. In under 10 minutes, they visibly disappeared from view, and now it is literally part of both of our daily routines. And not only does it work on the bags, it works on the appearance of crow's feet, fine lines, and wrinkles.
At our $14.95 price, it's the best way to try Plexiderm and see it work after your first application. Your solution is at plexidermtrial.com or call the number on your screen.
Are diapers destroying your confidence? Men's Liberty can help. Our discreet external device is safe, sanitary, and keeps you dry 24 hours, day and night. Step into the spotlight and do more of what you love with Men's Liberty. It's been ordered over 5 million times by thousands of satisfied fans. Call now to get a free week supply with your first order. There's no obligation, just the opportunity to try the most revolutionary solution to incontinence ever made. Unlike diapers, Men's Liberty is a long-term answer to dealing with incontinence. Make the choice to finally move forward with your life by calling Men's Liberty today. We'll answer all of your questions about how our completely unique device works and how Medicare can cover it. Dealing with expensive, uncomfortable diapers is no way to live. Men's Liberty lets you get back out there with more freedom and confidence to be you. Ready to find out more about our offer to get a free week supply? Then don't wait. Call Men's Liberty today.
I'm Don Ma in New York City, and we are NTD News.
Thank you for staying with us. Military promotions are back on. Senator Tommy Tuberville is backing off of his fight with the Pentagon over his abortion policy.
Around 400 nominees will be able to advance now that he's no longer halting the process. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports from Capitol Hill.
This comes as Senator Tuberville was facing mounting pressure from his Senate Republican colleagues for him to lift that hold on the military nominations, and as Senate Democrats were on the verge of taking a vote to temporarily change the rules to simply disregard his military holds and simply advance the 450 that he has been blocking.
We didn't get what we wanted. We didn't get to fight for it to leave it in the Senate, and so just unfortunate the American people didn't get a voice.
And he says even though he didn't get those changes that he was looking for, he says at the very least he thinks he opened some eyes. Now keep in mind, even though Tuberville did lift the holds on the vast majority of those military nominees, there are still a few that will be affected because he is keeping a hold on the top 4-star general nominees, and that would impact around 11 people.
And over in the House, Republicans are gearing up for an official impeachment inquiry. They held a closed-door hearing yesterday with IRS whistleblowers. So, Melina, what came out of that?
The 3 committee chairmen who are responsible for looking into the Biden family's foreign business deals have their hands on new documents that they say proves that the DOJ actually blocked these senior IRS investigators from asking about President Biden's potential involvement in his son's foreign business deals. Here's what one of those whistleblowers had to say shortly after leaving that hours-long closed-door testimony.
Hunter and his associates provided access for wealthy foreign individuals located in Ukraine, Romania, and China in exchange for money to enrich a well-known political family. At the end of the day, it appears that the Department of Justice attempted to sweep everything under the rug.
Now, this argument that the DOJ is stonewalling the investigation into whether or not President Biden had involvement in his son's business deals is crucial because it's along the lines of the argument that House Republicans are using to warrant why they need to authorize this impeachment inquiry into President Biden so that they can get the records that they need to further investigate. Although the White House has pushed back on this, saying that they have complied. They've provided thousands of pages of documents from the Treasury Department, but Speaker Mike Johnson today says otherwise, saying that the White House is actually preventing witness testimony from individuals who had been subpoenaed by Congress, as well as refusing to hand over documents from the National Archives. Here's Johnson.
And the House has no choice, if it's going to follow its constitutional responsibility, to formally adopt an impeachment inquiry on the floor so that when the subpoenas are challenged in court, we'll be at the apex of our constitutional authority. This vote is not a vote to impeach President Biden.
And Speaker Johnson says that next week the House will be voting on whether or not to authorize this impeachment inquiry into President Biden, and he says he's confident that in their slim majority they have the votes to do so. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
FBI Director Christopher Wray says the U.S. is facing unprecedented terrorist threats since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Here's more in his testimony in the Senate yesterday.
FBI Director Christopher Wray appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. He provided lawmakers a detailed overview of the wide variety of unprecedented threats the U.S. is facing. Wray says the threat of domestic and foreign terror attacks against the U.S. has dramatically increased since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel.
Given the steady drumbeat of calls for attacks by foreign terrorist organizations since October 7th, we're working around the clock to identify and disrupt potential attacks by those inspired by Hamas's horrific terrorist attacks in Israel.
The director warned of the dangers Iran pose right here in America.
So Iran, which is, of course, the world's biggest state sponsor of terrorism, let's start there. Iran, just in the last couple of years, if you want to bring it home here to the homeland, in the last couple of years, Iran has tried to assassinate a former U.S. national security advisor on U.S. soil, has tried to kidnap and then try to kill a journalist, American journalist and human rights activist, right smack in the middle of New York City, has conducted a cyber attack on a children's hospital in New England, and for extra credit, as Director Ratcliffe and I announced in the fall of 2020, tried to interfere in the last presidential election.
Wray said in the last 2 years, enough fentanyl has been seized to kill 80% of the U.S. population. He said the problem starts with China.
China supplies most of the precursors to the cartels in Mexico, which then leads to the fentanyl that comes here. And that's been talked about a fair amount, and it's a huge problem. But in addition to that, China is also responsible for an awful lot of the pill presses, manufacturing of the pill presses, which, of course, are also used. And in addition to that, a lot of people don't know this, but China is also responsible for an awful lot of the precursors for the meth that's manufactured south of the border as well.
Wray also mentions other problems the U.S. increasingly faces, such as violent crime and human trafficking. Wray provided lawmakers an overview of national security threats coming from many directions. He says the FBI remains committed to identifying and stopping those threats wherever they may be found.
And controversy over who should play in women's sports. That was the subject of heated testimony on Capitol Hill yesterday. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the debate centered around the Biden administration's proposed changes to Title IX.
Title IX was passed in 1972. It guarantees female students equal access to athletics and higher education. Since then, the number of girls who compete in high school sports has increased tenfold, from fewer than 300,000 in 1972 to over 3 million in 2021. The Biden administration wants to change it. The new rule proposal would make blanket sports bans against trans-identifying students in schools illegal, with a few exceptions. Representative Lisa McClain kicked things off with a proclamation.
Quite simply, men do not belong in women's sports.
McClain says men have greater muscle mass, lung capacity, and bone density.
This is why women should compete against women, and men should not compete against them. That is what Title IX was designed to protect. By allowing biological males to compete in women's sports, we are placing our daughters in danger every time they step onto the field.
Former collegiate swimmer Riley Gaines told the panel about numerous injuries suffered by female athletes competing against men who identify as women.
Of course, there is a place for everyone, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race or what sports you play. There's a place for everyone to play sports in this country. But unsafe, unfair, and discriminatory practices towards women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness.
Sarah Parshall-Perry of the Heritage Foundation says men jump higher, throw further, run faster, accelerate quicker, and punch harder than females.
What we're discussing today is an athletic scandal. a fraud of unprecedented proportions perpetrated by the federal government on American students. It turns obvious distinctions between the sexes into nothing more than the myths of a bygone era, while expecting female athletes to simply look the other way.
Perry says Title IX was the crowning achievement of the feminist movement. National Women's Law Center President Fatima Graves responded to a question of whether there are biological differences between women and men who identify as women.
I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but it's my understanding that it is more complex than what you are saying, in that there is variation among men and among women, and sometimes more variation among than there is between. And so, for example, in the WNBA, there's players that are 5'5" and there's players that are 6'9".
Graves downplayed the importance of sex in lifting that coveted trophy.
Success in school sports depends on a whole range of factors, including how hard you work and coaching and access to really good resources and facilities.
Democratic Congresswoman Summer Lee questioned the sincerity of Republicans to protect women.
While this committee purports to care about the safety of women, in 2021, when the House voted to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, 80% of the Republican caucus voted against that law. Not a single Republican member of this committee, nor our current speaker, voted for it.
Conservatives such as presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis reacted to the testimony on X, calling the Biden administration's Title IX rewrite a direct attack on women's rights. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And up next, CVS is changing its pricing model for prescription medication. Find out how it could save you money at the counter.
The actors' strike is over as the latest deal is ratified. We sit down with the host of NTD Business to hear what's in the deal.
Art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with Homelight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
Three of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
What most people know from Christopher Columbus is that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. There's so much more to the story of Columbus that today very few people know the actual story of Columbus. For example, Columbus had more than one voyage to America, which is shocking for most people to discover, but the reality is he had 4 voyages. And today, in modern culture, there's a lot of people very critical of Christopher Columbus. In fact, over the last couple of years, when there was a movement to tear down statues, Christopher Columbus had over 600 statues erected to him around the world, and the vast majority of those statues were torn down, were vandalized, but they're really
tearing down these monuments of Columbus without even knowing what Columbus even did.
Right, and so let's go through this, because some of the accusations we hear today is, right, Columbus enslaved the Native Americans. You hear a lot of negative things today, so let's just back up.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Good to have you back with us. And also now it's time to bring in our NTD business host, Don Ma, to discuss changes to CVS's prescription drug pricing model.
That could lead to some savings for customers starting next year. So Don, tell us more about this.
Right, so the whole point here for CVS is to make everything simpler, because the traditional model in determining the price of a drug, or the current model, actually is a bit complicated and it lacks transparency, and some critics argue that it actually inflates drug prices for customers. So this new model by CVS aims to make everything simpler. There's actually only 3 factors that's going to be involved in determining a drug price. First of all is the actual cost of the drug price that goes into how much drugstores pay for them. And the second factor is it's going to add a markup to the cost. And then on top of that, it's going to add some fees. So just 3 simple factors. So over 9,000 pharmacies from CVS are going to get paid based on this model. So the cost of the price of the drug, a clearly defined markup in addition, and fees, that's including handling the drugs and dispensing them to customers. So CVS is calling this CVS Cost Vantage. And just for a comparison, the old system, which is the current traditional system, involves a huge network of middlemen negotiating drug prices with manufacturers and insurers and pharmacies. So it's a bit complicated. The price of drugs that pharmacies pay was not determined by how much they should cost. It was mainly determined by middlemen, and these people negotiate prices with drug manufacturers for insurers, and the price tag that consumers actually pay was not based on how much it costs. But this new system aims to make it more transparent and to make drug prices more predictable at the drug counter.
That's good to know. It's very interesting. So, but I think the big question here for consumers is how this is going to help them, save money on prescription drugs. So if you would break it down to the point, how would that be?
Sure. So this shift in payment model could change the cost of prescription drugs. For some patients, the cost will go down for most of the drugs for consumers, employers, health insurers, but it won't necessarily make every single medicine cheaper. Some drugs may cost less while others may rise in price, but the CEO says that they're very committed to lowering drug prices. Drugstores, CVS drugstores actually will start using the model more broadly in 2025. So again, critics have argued that right now drug prices are a bit inflated because if you really think about it, there's so many factors, there's so many parties involved in this whole complicated system, and each party, each entity requires a bit of profit, right? So that adds up when there's a lot of parties. So by the end, it's going to increase the cost of drugs. And I think Americans would be surprised at the amount of hidden costs that are passed on to them because of this system. You know, Americans pay more than any other country in terms of drug costs. That's around $1,200. And let's hope this new model could bring that down a little bit.
Yeah, and this is definitely something that has dominated the national conversation, with even President Biden pledging to lower drug prices. So cheaper medications is always a plus here. But switching topics a bit here, Don, what's going on with the actor strike?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people are wondering that. Hollywood's actors voted yesterday to ratify the deal with studios that ended their nearly 4-month strike. Approval of the 3-year contract by SAG-AFTRA members was uncertain, with some prominent members voicing dissent on the deal. Now, control over the use of AI was the most contested issue in negotiations. It became the main driver of dissent during the voting. The contract provides a 7% general pay increase, with further hikes coming in the second and third years of the deal. And the deal also includes the creation of a fund to pay performers for future viewings of their work on streaming services. That fund is in addition to traditional residuals paid for showing movies or a series.
Yeah, that's really serious stuff. And I'll add to that great report that you had is that the Prism reports that the deal actually falls short on AI productions, and they cite the weak language and the loopholes in there. So hopefully these actors can have, some more protections going on down the road.
Yeah, AI is a serious issue right now.
It definitely is. All right, thank you so much for your time this morning, Don Ma, host of NTD Business.
Thank you.
And coming up, a Texas horse trainer is looking to revive traditional concepts of masculinity by mentoring and training the next generation in his own unique way. Stay tuned for that story.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
Kindness is cool. Because we feel happier when we do good. Kindness connects us with others and improves our self-esteem. Simple actions, meaningful lives. Let's practice kindness, share our love, and show our care for one another. Submit videos of kindness to Gangjing World for prizes up to $10,000 in cash. For more information, visit gangjingworld.com.
What was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. This doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.
You're American, and then you come home and you're Honduran.
Totally relate to that. Like, it's like double personality kind of thing.
I'm Jason Blair in San Francisco, California, and we are NTD News.
Good morning and welcome back. A California lake is swimming in white gold.
The Salton Sea is now one of the largest lithium brine deposits in the world, paving the way for a tech production boom and economic growth. NTD's Stephanie Sakal reports.
The Salton Sea, a once neglected resort area, is poised to become a crucial source of lithium for California, according to a recent U.S. Department of Energy study. Situated in California's southern desert between Coachella and Imperial Valleys, the Salton Sea contains abundant lithium deposits referred to as white gold. The amount can produce enough batteries to power 375 million electric vehicles. Researchers from the University of California, Berkeley project a potential lithium production of over 3,400 kilotons in the next 30 years. This could bring significant economic opportunities to a region where 21% of the population lives in poverty, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Experts have known for years about lithium in the area, but this new study represents the first government assessment into the size of lithium reserves in the Salton Sea, underscoring a unique chance to establish a domestic lithium industry. Despite facing environmental challenges such as 25% water loss over the past 25 years and pollution since its formation in 1905, the Salton Sea's lithium potential offers a dual opportunity for economic growth and environmental solutions. Stephanie Sakal, NTD News.
A Texas horse trainer is working to revive traditional concepts of manhood and masculinity.
And he's doing that by teaching young men the cowboy way. Let's take a look.
Capable of violence, but safe.
To Byron Hogan, it takes a man to be a cowboy.
They raise cattle, they raise good horses, they raise good kids. That cowboy is proud of how he takes care of his stock. He's proud of how he takes care of his family.
As a Texas-based professional horse trainer and emotional intelligence coach, Hogan says traditional masculinity is core to the cowboy lifestyle.
Chivalry, respect, endurance, fairness, trust, and responsibility. It's so sad that those things are lost.
He owns Hogan Equine, where people from all walks of life can come and learn from horsemanship. It's here that Hogan keeps traditional virtues alive through his mentoring programs for at-risk youths, veterans, and many others.
Working with young men, building their confidence, showing them what healthy masculinity is, what chivalry is, and the best way to do that is the same way that I learned it. So I learned it by being a cowboy.
He believes fatherlessness and modern society are taking away masculine values from young boys and men.
You know, when dad's not around to teach you things, you never develop that masculinity. And there's this whole idea that masculinity is toxic, and it's not.
Another program offered at Hogan Equine helps people build connections with others and learn emotional intelligence through training wild horses.
We're figuring out how to connect to this horse while we're stressed, and we're trying to figure out how to get the horse to connect with us while it's stressed. And in the midst of that, we build a relationship.
Hogan believes horses have been and will always be a part of America's foundation.
God created the horse for man. They provide us transportation, they provide us power, they provide us protection, like the southern border.
Hogan says he will keep embracing the traditional cowboy way of life to mentor youths and have a long-lasting impact on them.
All those values that are connected to those traditions and history when you look into it, huh?
Yeah, really cool story, and that hard work can teach you a lot about accountability.
Oh, for sure. All right, we're heading to a quick 1-minute break, so stay with us because we will be right back.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
Yeah, so there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are our top stories. The IDF tightens its grip on Gaza, killing 5 Hamas commanders in a recent strike. It's now reiterating its critical mission to bring hostages home.
The U.S. announces new visa restrictions against violent individuals from the West Bank. We look at the policy that Secretary of State Antony Blinken says seeks accountability. Jewish students from Ivy League universities visit a House hearing about campus anti-Semitism to share their personal stories. Then hear how the presidents of Harvard, UPenn, and MIT define their policies around harassment. Republican voters weigh in on GOP candidates as 2024 election activity ramps up. Hear what they're saying about some of the candidates. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney says she'll be doing everything she can to stop Trump from getting elected. That includes a potential 2024 presidential run. The actors' strike is officially over as the latest contract deal is ratified. Find out what they finally agreed on after months of strikes.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning and welcome. Today is Wednesday, December 6th. And today's top news, starting with the Israel-Hamas war. Israel says it has eliminated 5 Hamas commanders of the northern Gaza Strip Brigade.
Israel is now contending with another terrorist group in the Gaza Strip, the Islamic Jihad. Israel Defense Forces said that yesterday was the most intense day of fighting in 5 weeks.
So for more on this, we want to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. He's a spokesperson for the IDF. Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel. It's good to see you again. So first, it was reported that the IDF is closing in on Yahya Sinwar in Khan Younis. So any updates on that you could give us on what's going on at the moment and what you have been finding on the ground?
Indeed. Good morning, Evelyn. Thank you for having me. The IDF has increasing its activities, broadening the scope of our offensive, and indeed engaging Hamas wherever they are. We have continued our operations both in the north, but also expanded activities in and around the Khan Younis area. And absolutely, we are engaging the enemy wherever they are, in their strongholds, in their command and control positions. And we are I would say exerting a severe strike on their capabilities to conduct attacks against us. It is part of our mission to dismantle and destroy Hamas. This is what we're doing.
Is there anything you can share about why the focus on Khan Younis, the significance of it for the IDF or Hamas?
We're not focusing on Khan Younis as Khan Younis. We're focusing on specific centers of gravity within Khan Younis. So it's very much more specific than the city of Khan Younis. Indeed, the town, the area has been encircled, but there are specific strikes, specific ground activities that are taking place against specific locations, which are centers of gravity of Hamas's operations. And we have said since the outset, since the 7th of October, when Hamas launched their brutal massacre against Israel, that we would seek them out wherever they are. And if they are in Khan Younis and in specific locations, that is where we will operate.
Right. And now the U.S. has been pushing for the level of assistance and fuel deliveries to increase. So I want to know from your perspective, what's the concern from the IDF here? What kind of difficulties are there that would inhibit or that would make it difficult for this to happen?
Evelyn, the humanitarian effort goes hand in hand with the operational effort. We understand that, we see that. It is part of our professional role as a military to distinguish between civilian non-combatants and the terrorist organization. What we're doing is evacuating people, but also making sure that there's a steady flow, and not only steady, also an increasing flow of humanitarian supplies, medical supplies, food supplies, shelter into the Gaza Strip for the international humanitarian organizations. Indeed, as I said, it's part and parcel of our ongoing operational effort, precisely because the people of Gaza are not our enemy. Hamas is our enemy.
And at the same time, there was a letter today to the War Cabinet that says there is solid intelligence that some hostages' health have seriously deteriorated. And of course, diplomatically, Israel has stepped away from the negotiating table for now. But in your operation specifically on the ground, is the release of hostages still a priority? And is there anything more that you can share about that?
So factually, it was Hamas that stepped away from the operational pause, the ceasefire that existed when they decided not to continue to release the women and children. 17 women and children are still being held by Hamas, and that is with the other 100 with the 100 in total, 138 hostages that are being held. So from our perspective, of course, it was Hamas that decided that we should remobilize against them. We proved that only through the understanding that they are under threat, that our military forces employed, that they will consider releasing hostages, and that is why we are on the go again against Hamas. Indeed, the issue of hostages is a national priority, but also a top priority for the IDF. We are utilizing all of our operational and intelligence capabilities in order to try and create the operational opportunity to bring them home safe and sound. That will happen. That is how we are operating. And it has to work in conjunction with the ongoing diplomatic efforts.
One more thing is that there is this worry that this war could actually bring more support to Hamas. There is one retired army general that was saying that for every terrorist killed, he estimates like around 10 might be recruited. So we're seeing quite some tensions in the West Bank also. So of course, also there are some extremist settlers, so there's both sides. And are we seeing any significant spillover of the war there, would you say?
So here's what we know. We know what Hamas did on the 7th of October. We know that given the chance, they would do it again and again, basically because they've said so publicly. So we know ultimately that inaction is not a possibility. We have to fight Hamas, and we have to make sure that they can't have this power of government in order to build a terrorist army, in order to build their arsenal of rockets and missiles against our people, in order to build their explosive drone capabilities, indeed, in order to build their terror tunnel capabilities, all of these at the expense, not for the good, of the people of Gaza. With regard to the additional arenas, of course, Hamas has a distinct interest to try and create unrest in the West Bank. From our perspective, terrorism in the West Bank, we will engage the terrorists, we will seek them out and prevent them from conducting attacks. But it's not only there. We've seen Iranian involvement in the region, in the broader region, whether it's from the Houthis down south or from Hezbollah in the north on the border with Lebanon. Of course, it means that the IDF needs to be very poised and prepared for further escalation. But I would say that our primary focus is engaging an offensive effort on the Gaza front against Hamas, but a defensive effort on the border, on the other borders in and around, whether it's the West Bank, the south, against the Houthis, or against Hezbollah in the north.
Well, thank you so much for your insights and updates this morning, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. I always appreciate your time.
Thank you, Evelyn.
And Israel has revoked the residence visa of the United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator Lynn Hastings. That's according to Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Eli Cohen, who posted on X.
Cohen said Israel will no longer be silent in the face of the bias of the UN after Hastings failed to condemn the October 7th massacre and kidnappings. Instead, Cohen said Hastings condemned Israel, a democratic country that protects its citizens. Hastings has strongly criticized Israel for its military campaign in Gaza, which, according to the UN, has created a humanitarian disaster. Hastings has served in the post since late 2020.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a new visa restriction policy yesterday. It's aimed to stop violent individuals from the West Bank from coming to the U.S.
Blinken says the policy applies to both Israelis and Palestinians responsible for any attacks. Here's State Department spokesperson Matt Miller on the move.
Under this policy, the United States will pursue visa restrictions against individuals involved in or meaningfully contributing to the undermining of peace, security, or stability in the West Bank. This includes acts of violence against persons or property, as well as undue restrictions on civilians' access to essential services and basic necessities. Immediate family members of such persons may also be subject to these restrictions.
The State Department says the policy will apply to both Israelis and Palestinians responsible for attacks in the West Bank.
Blinken says the U.S. will continue to seek accountability for all acts of violence against West Bank civilians, regardless of the perpetrator or the victim.
Jewish students from Harvard, UPenn, and MIT shared personal stories ahead of yesterday's House hearing on combating campus anti-Semitism. Presidents from the three universities then testified about what they've been doing to address it and how their institutions define harassment. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more about their testimonies.
MIT graduate student Talia Khan was one of 4 Jewish college students who shared personal experiences before Tuesday's hearing. The daughter to Jewish and Afghan Muslim parents says the university's environment became extremely toxic and anti-Semitic after October 7th, and that the administration has failed to address the crisis. Khan says she left her study group because group members told her people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die for partying on stolen land.
I don't want to have to keep advocating for Jewish student safety on campus. It's not my job. It's your job. Please do your job and act now. And if you can't, I'm asking Congress to do it for you.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said the suppression of religious freedom is not who Americans are and goes against the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Johnson stated history has proven that anti-Semitism left unchecked will spread to other minorities and ultimately all people of religions.
Make no mistake, what's happening at colleges today is not free speech. It's exactly the opposite. The stifling of free speech and free expression, the demonizations of students for simply living out their faith and who they are.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik fired off questions to university professors during the committee hearing on their efforts to combat the rise in campus anti-Semitism. But Stefanik couldn't seem to get a straight answer, receiving drawn-out and similar responses.
Our commitment to
It's
free
a yes
speech,
or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech
It's a yes or no
extends-
question.
Harvard's university president Claudine Gay testified she's heard genocidal calls against Israel on campus and personally finds it abhorrent, but stated the university gives a wide berth to free expression.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it is
values
against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When that
You
speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression.
Stefanik later put the same question about code of conduct and calls for genocide to UPenn President Liz McGill, who also refused to answer yes or no, saying it depends on context.
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes.
The university presidents were also grilled over foreign funding. Harvard's Gay refused to answer if the university had received $1.5 billion from foreign governments and entities for its Middle East Studies department over the last 3 years. She would only say the university receives funding from various sources. Stefanik is calling for her resignation. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The MIT student we just heard, Talia Khan, said after the hearing that the responses to Stefanik's question were horrendous and crazy.
She added that if anyone advocated for the genocide of any ethnic group, they would undoubtedly be expelled from campus. She said the controversy surrounding this issue only comes up because it involves Jewish people.
And after the break, we take a look at what Republican voters have to say about some of the 2024 presidential candidates.
Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney is considering a third-party 2024 presidential run. Her reason might not surprise you.
The Hollywood actors' strike officially ends as the union ratifies the contract. Hear what deals the union made after months of striking.
Local police get caught up in a chase trying to round up a runaway pig. Stay tuned to see if he managed to pull off the great escape.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
I use Book a Limo on all my trips. They have drivers everywhere.
I always feel safe when I travel with their chauffeurs, from hello to goodbye.
Checking rates, booking, and managing clients' reservations online is so easy.
The confirmations, trip reminders, and car status updates are great when I'm on the go.
I want my clients to have the best experience during their trip. That's why I've used Book a Limo for the past 30 years.
What's your destination? Book a limo, any car, anywhere.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days. In 4th grade, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. I had 70 and 60-degree curvatures. Went to Shriners Hospital in LA. It's been fused ever since. I noticed a lot of pain going down my left buttock into my thighs and into my calf. I could be standing there and my legs would just go out. I went through pain management for 2.5 years, and the pain management specialist told me there was nothing more he could do for me. We actually did our own research, and next thing I know, Dr. Benatti called, and he told me immediately over the phone what my issue was without even seeing me. I was in a twilight stage during surgery, and you can actually say, where are you feeling that pain? And it immediately stops.
Hold the leg up there. No pain here? No pain here? No pain on the butt?
All of a sudden, they're all, do you want to get up and walk? Well, I couldn't walk before, and I got up and I just started crying because I had no pain. And I had all my weight on my left leg and on my right leg, and I walked a straight line with no assistance, no falling, no grabbing onto the walls, nothing. I held my own weight. And that's the first time in months that I was able to walk by myself.
Benatti succeeds where others fail. For more stories like these and the rest of our program, check out American Medicine Today, featuring cutting-edge medical and science innovators and a medical professional's insight on political and social issues plaguing our nation and healthcare. American Medicine Today, Saturdays 6 and Sundays at 9 on NTD Television and other streaming platforms.
Welcome back. Former President Trump is making his second visit to Iowa in less than a week.
But are the voters still with him, or are they giving other candidates a second look?
As fall turns to winter in Iowa, it's a season of choosing, and a critical moment for Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley to show that the Republican primary is still a contest, not a coronation.
I'm very impressed with Nikki Haley, and
I just hope she gets the nomination.
Roger Dvorak voted for Trump, but believes his criminal cases are a distraction.
Whether he's guilty or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I just don't think he can be effective as leader of the country.
There's little doubt Trump remains a driving force in the campaign.
We're going to win the Iowa caucuses.
He's in Iowa again the second time in 4 days to try and maintain his dominance. Yet exhaustion with the former president, once whispered, easily comes alive in conversations with Republicans, like Karen Hanna, who also voted for Trump, but is now weighing an alternative.
I think Ron DeSantis is a little bit more solid and less drama, just all the things that Trump's going through, the courts. So unsure about that, but no, I like Ron DeSantis, what he stands for.
The question is how many Iowans are inclined to go against the grain of the Trump-controlled GOP as they make their final decisions.
I'm looking at Nikki Haley and, of course, DeSantis and Vivek and Trump.
Ann Walford's laughter underscores the expressions of many Republicans, a reluctance to be with Trump now, but a pledge to be with him in the end.
Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney says, she's eyeing a potential 2024 presidential run.
She told the Washington Post she's considering running as a third-party candidate. Here's Cheney on why she wants to join the race.
Right now and in this election cycle, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure Donald Trump's not elected.
Cheney says she never would have thought about a third-party run several years ago, but that she thinks democracy is at risk, both internationally and in the U.S., because of Trump's influence over the GOP.
Cheney was one of the few Republicans who voted to impeach Trump. She also sat on the January 6th committee.
And President Biden says former President Trump is keeping him in the race.
Biden told Democratic donors yesterday he wasn't sure he'd be seeking another term if Trump wasn't running for the White House.
Biden also said Democrats cannot let Trump win. The president commented during a fundraiser at a private home outside Boston.
The Biden campaign shrugged off the president's statement, saying the president has always described Trump as a unique threat to the country. Biden appeared to walk back the comment later Tuesday on the White House lawn.
Would you be running for president if Trump wasn't running?
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
Would you drop out if Trump runs out?
No, not now.
The U.S. Department of Defense has released the names of all the deceased airmen following the aircraft crash off the coast of Japan last week. The DoD says there is no likelihood of any survivors. The accidental crash of a CV-22A Osprey prompted a search and rescue operation. According to the release, the operation has now transitioned to a search and recovery operation after a days-long effort. One airman, who was identified as Sergeant Jake Gallagher of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, was recovered over the weekend. The remaining airman's status has been changed from whereabouts unknown to deceased.
And we're turning our attention to Hollywood. Hollywood's actors voted yesterday to ratify the deal with studios that ended their nearly 4-month strike.
Approval of the 3-year contract by members of SAG-AFTRA was uncertain, with some prominent voices dissenting on the deal.
Control over AI use was the most contested issue in negotiations. It became the main driver of dissent during the voting.
The contract provides a 7% general pay raise, with further hikes coming in the second and third years of the deal.
The deal also includes the creation of a fund to pay performers for future viewings of their work on streaming services.
That fund is in addition to traditional residuals paid for showing movies or a TV series. And to end the show, we have some fun news for you.
Police in New Jersey were called to a chase yesterday, but not the kind you might be thinking of. A couple of officers had their hands full as they tried to round up a pig that got on the loose. The officers eventually caught the pig, but it was no easy task. The pig's name is Albert Einswine. It's unclear how he got free. After the pig went hog wild, police released him with no charges and returned him to his owners.
So we learned from the Cowboys and then the police pig boys.
I'm still stuck on the Albert Einswine. This is hilarious.
Yeah.
All right.
And Meerkats. at the Whipsnade Zoo in the UK have posted their Christmas wish list to Santa just in time for the festive season. Oh, those guys are so cute. Zookeepers at the zoo hid Meerkats, Bibbidi, and Sylvie's favorite treats in and around a festive postbox in their outdoor habitat. It draws out their natural curiosity and encourages them to use their impressive digging skills. Whipsnade Zoo was first opened in 1931. It's home to 11,000 animals and is the largest zoo in the UK.
So cute.
Yeah, they get the
Curious
stripes.
little beings.
I know, yeah. Well, and you know, they're very social animals, they say.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they burrow and do their thing, so.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, but the Albert Einswine, really, that was good. Yeah, all right. Good job to anyone who named that pig. All right, we have to wrap up our show now, but we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Stay tuned for our News Today broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
And don't forget to tune in tonight at 10 p.m. for exclusive post-debate coverage on NTD News.
That's right. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.